Hello, everyone. We're here from the PBIS Tier 1 Academy, presenting a video version of December's team training for teams in their second year. I'm Christine Downs.
And I'm Eric Mackey.
We're both PBIS trainers for any PBIS. Today's presentation will focus on integration and alignment of PBIS with other school initiatives and school-family partnerships. We'll be revisiting our Working Smarter matrix and completing the School Family Practices Survey. Some additional resources you might find helpful as we go through today's presentation include the Center on PBIS's webpage focused on the role of family in PBIS, the Stakeholder Input and Satisfaction Survey, a technical guide and any PBIS mini module focused on alignment of initiatives, and a video focused on teaching social emotional learning skills. Pause this video for a moment and take the opportunity to find these documents and resources within the syllabus page on anypbis.org or embedded within the associated PowerPoint slides for this session, also found on anypbis. So we're in December. How's your team done with getting back to basics in order to meet student, family, and faculty needs? Think about what effort you've put into creating those relationships between school community members. How are you using screening to identify academic, behavioral, emotional, and resource needs early? Have you identified clear avenues for supporting students and faculty? And what work has gone into teaching expected behaviors and/or monitoring those behaviors for progress? Pause your video and take a moment to list the adaptations your team has made to your core PBIS systems and practices for this year. Also, you may have adapted the data you review in order to monitor those practices. Maybe you're more focused on minor behaviors this year. Maybe you're focused on attendance. We know that's a big one, and whether students are participating in class at all. Take a moment to consider what data you're gathering to guide decision-making and what data you might still need. Last session, we introduced you to the Supporting and Responding to Behavior resource, which pulls together the latest research on the best practices for supporting appropriate classroom behavior. If you haven't yet done so, take a moment and download the document and review it again. It's an amazing interactive document. Pause the video for a moment and think about how your team can use this guide to build your school's class-wide support plan. Have a team discussion or take notes and share it with your team when you're together again.
In this next section, we'll talk about merging PBIS with the other initiatives happening within your building and your district. As we've been saying from the beginning, PBIS is a framework upon which we hang and organize our initiatives, such as SEL, trauma-sensitive schools, anti-bullying, restorative practices, etc. We want to use PBIS to streamline our efforts so that we can work smarter and not harder, and reduce the whiplash and burnout from chasing the shiny new objects or initiatives. We want to align so that there is a clear, cohesive message going out to our fellow faculty, our community, and district. Instead of constantly shifting the conversation from safe and supportive schools to trauma-informed practices to SEL, we can say that these are our Tier 1 supports to meet the needs of all students that are targeted towards meeting X. Needs that we have identified from our data. And finally, we can use the core features of PBIS to help guide us in how to align our initiatives. The National Technical Assistance Center created this helpful technical guide for aligning initiatives back in 2017. We're going to be boiling it down here, but the basic steps are to define your valued outcomes, such as a positive school culture, to then list your related initiatives like PBIS, SEL, bullying prevention, etc. Identify core system features such as teaching lessons or acknowledging students, analyzing and making decisions, such as how to combine your professional development events, and planning for effective alignment, like combining teams and outcomes. The Working Smarter Team Matrix is a helpful tool to revisit as a first step towards aligning initiatives. Start by reviewing or recreating your list of all the initiatives taking place in your school. Really take the time to identify the purpose and the outcomes for each initiative. The last column, where you indicate the school or district improvement plans, is really helpful in deciding which initiatives can be aligned. Take a quick moment and jot down some notes about the related initiatives in your school. Here's an example of a completed Working Smarter matrix. Notice how many committees are focused on reducing office referrals. Also notice how many of the same people are on those committees. This may be a good opportunity to combine these meetings into one meeting. So you listed the related initiatives. Now let's take a look at the core system features of these initiatives. Here's a helpful alignment worksheet your team can use to help break down and align your initiatives. Notice across the top you have the school's 3 initiatives: PBIS, SEL, and trauma-informed practices. Across the left-hand side going down, you have the core features such as student outcomes, teaming, training, coaching, fidelity, and impact. Of course, the document is broken down by systems, data, practices, and desired outcomes. You can find the alignment worksheet link on the syllabus page for the December team training. Next, we want to analyze our breakdown and make decisions for where we can align and when the initiatives need to stay distinct. Finally, we're going to want to create a plan to make these initiatives work together, like combining professional development. Let's look at the outcomes. Notice that all 3 mention school climate and 2 mention predictability. Next, the practices. They all have a vision statement. If you combine, you'd have one common vision statement. The 2 initiatives involve teaching specific behaviors around how to act in class and how to interact with others. Maybe we can infuse the trauma-sensitive language into our matrix. 2 of them have lessons around social skills. Maybe these lessons can be combined too. They all have intervention strategies. This might be a good time to see where the strategies overlap. Those strategies that overlap could be given priority for training and for assessment of fidelity. The next areas to consider are systems and data. So you have 3 separate teams. What did your Working Smarter matrix indicate? Are the same people on these teams? If so, see if you can combine those meetings and save time. Then there's also how you're training the staff. Given the overlap in outcomes and how many in many of the practices, can those trainings be combined into one cohesive training so that staff understand how they're interconnected? Finally, we look at fidelity and impact data. Can we use one fidelity tool to assess the fidelity, or do we need to use separate fidelity tools? With regards to impact, all 3 are using the same nursing, counselor visits, and school climate survey to measure impact. We could look to make sure that those sources have a simplified and efficient way to gather the data that each initiative needs, rather than having multiple forms to complete and send. So speaking of integrating PBIS with SEL, let's get a sense of what's happening at your school. Does your school have universal SEL practices such as second step or responsive classroom? You can consider crosswalking your PBIS expectations with your SEL skills and behaviors, such as aligning them with your values and expectations within contexts. So, in order to be safe, a student may need to keep hands and feet to himself and tell an adult when he, she, they are worried about a friend. See how we're pairing the behavioral expectation with the social emotional skill within the value. Continuing on with SEL and PBIS, if you're dealing with stress and anxiety, and that's become a major priority within the school, the team can identify specific strategies and skills and incorporate them into their social curriculum or your social curriculum. Maybe the data suggests that the lunch period is a challenging time with regards to behaviors, especially with regards to bullying, teasing, excluding others from the table. We could build out our matrix of expectations at lunch to include social emotional skills, like here in the grid, such as being respectful at lunch would include inviting those sitting alone to join in. To be achieving and organized within the lunch context, you want to have a lunch plan and choose a quiet or social lunch area. And then to be responsible at lunch, you can use your breathing techniques and listen to your own personal signals. Then it's just a matter of teaching those skills to the students. The matrix is the delivery mechanism to get the skills out to all students. It's the common language and the script used to teach, acknowledge, and pre-correct. This allows all staff to use the same approach for teaching and supporting across a school day and throughout the year. This is an example of how a school might integrate their PBIS and SEL efforts within the academic curriculum. I've worked with several schools where teachers pair the objective for the lesson with a particular value or skill the students should be espousing through the particular academic task. So before a challenging math test, or maybe even when preparing students for the MCAS, a teacher may include a lesson or a reminder lesson on how to persevere, pairing it with the school values like responsibility. Another way to organize your SEL and PBIS efforts is to look at your office discipline referrals. This particular team noticed that their highest infractions or most frequent infractions were around failure to comply with directions, inappropriate language, and tardiness. They then identified what they would like the students to do instead, such as responding in a timely fashion, using appropriate words, and being in their seat once class was supposed to start. From there, they identified the social, emotional, and behavioral skills that they needed to teach to build those schools and to reduce the infractions. This is one way to prioritize and streamline how you integrate your SEL and your PBIS efforts. Follow these guidelines to effectively align and integrate your initiatives. So always start at the organizational level if possible. Can or does the same one person have administrative and budget authority over the various initiatives? Having one or just a couple people managing these initiatives can really help to avoid redundancies in trainers, repetitive tasks, staffing, and resources. Next, use your Working Smarter matrix to align your common outcomes and outcome measures and see if it can combine teams to save time and effort. Then you want to align and integrate the common core features into your practices and PD to be as efficient as possible with your time and your resources. And then finally, resolve any logic model conflicts. So examine how everything flows together and resolve any issues where procedures might diverge, such as one initiative might use tangible acknowledgement systems, while another stresses using only verbal feedback. So work with your team to come up with a collaborative, workable protocol to help guide your faculty and how they should respond in those situations. Continue to integrate across all your activities, such as at your kickoff events, your booster trainings, throughout your ongoing direct instruction to students, within the academic curriculum, and through all visible avenues like displays, posters, daily announcements, social media, etc. So take a moment to pause this video and review the integration and alignment worksheet and the Working Smarter matrix. Consider what resources, such as people, time, documents, you're going to need to complete these forms and to develop actionable steps towards integrating your initiatives through PBIS.
In this next section, we'll talk about developing and strengthening our partnerships with our students' families. So some key points here, and at its core, family engagement involves families and educators coordinating and collaborating together to support children. The focus is on creating consistency across home and school. Collaboration includes families and educators making decisions together and working as partners. Family engagement should be embedded in cultural beliefs and ideologies. Families have different beliefs about education and their role in supporting their child. Part of working together as partners is clearly defining role expectations in a manner that's congruent with family, culture, and expectations. You may offer families various ways of engaging based upon their culture and comfort level. Family engagement is active, interactive, and dynamic. When families are engaged as partners, there's an expectation that family members and educators are actively making plans, setting goals, and carrying out activities. It's also interactive. Collaboration involves working together as a team rather than in isolation. And family engagement is dynamic in that it changes over time. For example, schools might partner with parents during elementary school around how to support children through homework completion. During these years, parents may need to be more actively and directly involved, although not doing their homework for them, hopefully. Then in middle school, they may shift towards helping parents to work with students around self-monitoring strategies, like how to use a schedule, using a checklist, planning short breaks, things like that. School-family collaboration is exceedingly important to supporting student learning in virtual contexts. So what does the research say about the benefit of family engagement? Well, unsurprisingly, we see lots of benefits. So with students, we see improvements with regards to achievement, attendance, and reduced dropout rates. And with the adults, we see increases in trust of teachers and improved parent-teacher relationships. And specifically for teachers, we see increased job satisfaction and reduced turnover rates, which is great. Research suggests that support for family engagement approaches, there's a few key elements. One of the first things to focus on is creating support for family engagement at the district and school level. Like we said before, it's important to clarify the district's approach to family engagement with those role definitions for schools and for families. Who's going to do what, right? Think about how families can actively and passively be involved in their students' education and in school leadership, like attending parent-teacher nights, being part of parent-teacher associations, being part of committees at the school and district level. Evidence also indicates that family typically wait for schools to contact them about working together. So it's really important for schools to reach out proactively to families to initiate a collaborative working relationship. This is also an opportunity to establish positive communication pathways rather than the first communication being about a problem or a demand, which is usually negative. So given that parents have those varying needs and resources, schools might want to create communication systems using multiple formats. So yes, there's traditional paper, but also email, via text, using Class Dojo. Right? These strategies keep the conversation going between educators and parents rather than having the information only flow in one direction, from school to home. We know that families definitely differ with regard to their beliefs about education and schooling, their availability and motivation to collaborate. Consider how your school might provide a range of opportunities and experiences for families to collaborate. This could include holding events at community centers that may be easier for families to attend, or holding meetings and events at different times of the day or evening throughout the year. We know these approaches require an investment in educator time, but they do show a commitment to working with families, with all families in the school community. And finally, collaborating with families is often viewed as something extra or an add-on. However, we know the most efficient and effective support for a student is their own family. And by organizing systems to support families, we can positively influence child development and promote academic, behavioral, and life success. There are several research-informed approaches to engage families in PBIS, These approaches emphasize involving families in PBIS at school, right? At your team and in the teaching, reinforcement, that kind of stuff. Extending the core features of positive behavior support to the home setting, like with a home matrix, and coordinating support across home and school. Maybe parents give reinforcers that they can then bring into school and turn in, and vice versa. If you'd like to learn more after this session, you can download an ebook from pbis.org called Aligning and Integrating Family Engagement in Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. So now take a moment to pause the video and consider your school's family engagement strategies. What are you doing now? Consider what you do to share information out with the families, to get feedback from your families, and how you use that feedback to modify your practices currently. Okay, now that you've created your list of your current family engagement practices, you might want to complete the Family School Practices Survey, which was designed for school teams to use as a self-assessment tool and an action planning tool. The tool itself allows teams to rate implementation of school approaches at 0, 1, 2 kind of approach in PBIS, to engaging families in PBIS across a couple of different dimensions, which are system level problem solving, sort of assessing team activities to promote family engagement, database decision making, school home communication, resources to support family engagement, and PBIS practices at home and school. Now, take a few minutes, pause the video, and complete the school family self-assessment tool with your team if they haven't already done so. You can access it by pointing your smart device at the QR code here, or by clicking onto the link in the any PBIS syllabus for this training. Identify your areas of strength and need, right? And complete the action plan at the end of the tool to target the areas of need that build upon your areas of strength. And then think, based upon the info from the prior slides, your current practices, and the results of your engagement survey, consider what strategies you could feasibly add or modify, and then begin working on those.
Thank you so much for spending time with us to talk about integrating and aligning PBIS with your other initiatives, as well as strategies for family engagement. Before we go, please do consider whether you or some members of your team would benefit from school-wide information system training, otherwise known as SWIS. These trainings are free to schools enrolled in the Academy and provide your team members with the skills they need to use SWIS. You must register for all sessions in advance. Please note that if you don't yet have a SWIS account, you will need to engage in a separate but easy process to have an account built for your school. Thank you for taking the time to review this team session. Next time we get together, we'll be talking about equity, implicit bias, vulnerable decision points, and neutralizing routines. Take care, and we'll see you in January. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.